so we do have a quorum, so I will call the meeting to order at is it 9:02?
Sure.
And just since we have people on, we'll go around the room with introductions. I'm John Carrington, Director of Public Works.
Jennifer Kaufman, Director of Planning and Development.
Derek Delauder, Assistant Town Engineer.
Ryan Aylesworth, Town Manager.
Sherry Bazansky, Public Works Specialist.
That's the traffic authority. Without Sherry's not part of the authority. We're missing the fire chief, the resident state trooper, and our operations manager. The operations manager is on vacation. The other two could appear sometime during the meeting. First item on the agenda after call to order is approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Derek, seconded by Jen. Any changes?
Nope.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Assuming Ryan voted for
Yes.
it. And it's approved. There's no old business on the agenda, new business. The first item on the agenda is Yukon Health parking spots. Mr. Watkins sent an email over about reducing there's currently a parking spot in front of Yukon Health in downtown. He's asking to change it from 2 hours to 1 hour. Cynthia, do you have anything you want to contribute?
Well, I think it might be two.
Two spots. Yeah.
Two spots, yes.
Well, one says ambulance, doesn't it?
No, there's three. So
Okay,
counting the
three.
ambulance, there's three. So there's two spots. Yeah, that he's referring to. I think the thinking is this would help him get people in and out of there and have the spaces more free for the patients.
I recall this coming before the committee before, saying that 1 hour was insufficient for them to come in, see an appointment, and then leave. So I'm not sure why the sudden change to depart from 2 hour. I'm not sure I would support it at this time, but I mean, I'm definitely open for discussion.
I mean, hopefully he knows how long it takes for an appointment, but it could take longer, and we don't want people going to Yukon Health getting tickets, and then we're gonna have to deal with that issue.
Yeah, I mean, his argument is that he's got people sitting there overnight, which Laz tries to get to as soon as they get in, but they don't get in until around 8. So they can see who's been there overnight, and that's where he's the most concerned.
So I'm not sure.
But there's no real way around that.
Like either way, whether if you're gonna, it's still an infraction if it's overnight with 2 hour versus 1 hour, right?
Yeah, there's no overnight parking in downtown,
Right.
period.
Right.
But he's of, I mean, not signaling agreement, but he's of the mindset that going from 2 to 1 would somehow act as a deterrent for the people that are gonna
Yes.
park overnight in the 2 hour spot.
That's his
I
argument.
think he's thinking Laz, who shows up at 8 to enforce parking in the summer at least, may not be able to tell if that car's been there overnight, but now they can, at 9 o'clock, they can ticket it.
Okay.
Or it'd now be 10 o'clock, and
Oh,
the students the people parking there illegally know they have 2 hours.
So it's basically about how long, okay, so the issue is cutting down the time that the car's sitting there in the morning
I think
from the
that's-
night.
There's two
Yeah, I
issues that,
think-
one, we should enforce parking better earlier in the morning,
Right.
which is a Laz issue, or
Yeah.
us paying Laz issue.
I mean, if we just expressed or they have conveyed the concern to Laz about what they're observing.
Yeah, I
Bring to
mean,
their
this is waxes and wanes in terms of the concern from them. So, you know, we had a discussion out there a couple of weeks ago, and that's when he made the suggestion. Could this be changed? I mean, my understanding is regardless, if it says health center, you're not supposed to be parking there at all. So Laz can immediately ticket them.
If they know.
If they know, that's the crux of the matter. If they know it's not a health center person. You know, and I just say this, you know, publicly, we have passed on passes to put in the dashboard for the health center employees to give to the patients. That becomes a, you know, logistical issue for the staff there, from what Chris told me. But we have tried to do what we can to provide some other things to do so that Laz does know that it is a health center patient.
Just think we're not solving the problem by this request for a
Yeah.
solution.
I mean, I think maybe, I'm not saying it'll really improve the situation or not, but maybe we as the town, if Cynthia, maybe we have already, but I guess since this is the first I'm hearing about this specific issue, I certainly would support us, or the traffic authority, or whatever the right entity is, official correspondence to Laz saying this request has been made. We don't believe that from like a policy standpoint, this is the best outcome. So can we lean on you to improve your enforcement, or ensure that you're enforcing the warning rules so that we don't have to, go this route.
Yeah, they go out there immediately on the CV, I don't know, it's not CVS, the loading zone and the health center as soon as they get in. I mean, if we wanted them to look at different hours, that's another discussion, because
Right.
we don't pay them. They pay it comes out of the ticket revenue that they get paid. We are also losing our long-term LAS employee there. So they are triaging a little bit, and that's making me a little. I just want to explain the background. So, Jess is out there, right away when they come in, but right now the hours are her hours are 8 to 4, and other hours go longer but not with the supervisor.
The other way I look at it is, it's really their sign that we put it up, but it's their parking spot. If they want it to be 1 hour and it's not gonna work, what's the difference? I mean, other than us changing the sign out, they have 2 hours, they want it to be 1. Okay, we gave you 1, didn't solve your problem, but.
Well, I guess,
It's not here to
I
discuss.
mean, not
it.
to imagine
Yeah.
all the permutation, but I'm not saying, oh, there's gonna be an epidemic of this, but okay, so just to play devil's advocate, the issue I see with that is, somebody shows up legitimately to use the designated parking for the prescribed purpose. Oh, that appointment was quick. I got time. I'm gonna get lunch at Dog Lane now. I'm not with my car. And now the next person who needs it. So it's like, I was here, which I could see somebody ethically justifying in their mind. Well, I had a valid purpose when I
Well, 2
arrived.
hour, they definitely.
It's kind of like the person that, pumps their gas and then dilly dallies in the store. It's like, well, I was pumping gas. I didn't.
And I paid by card, so I don't have to pay in the store.
Yeah, there's two, and maybe we want them to stay, right? And we want them to be successful, and if
They're an important anchor downtown.
This
they are
makes-
very important.
This will satisfy CRISPR. It won't solve the problem, but it'll satisfy CRISPR. Then they'll come back in 6 months, they didn't work or something.
Maybe it's changing this and talking to Laz at the same time and encouraging them to, if they have a patient that's gonna be longer than 2 hours, they need to go out and put the.
I think
gas
they,
in.
Or they need to go to the parking garage.
Right, I mean, it's a little bit of behavior management here.
I think if they put the card in the window that said, I'm a patient here, I don't think Glass would ever ticket them. If the
Right.
same car was there for 3 hours, I don't think they'd take them.
Right.
They'd say, oh, they're appointment. They're gonna just assume their appointment ran late.
Right.
Right, would you agree with?
I agree with that.
So they have to, maybe we tell CRISPR, we will do it, but you have to use these placards.
Mhm.
If you don't use these placards.
The system won't work.
And you're gonna get tickets, and that's gonna be on you.
But if you don't use the placards.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is there's currently 2 hour parking with placards.
but they
They're
don't
not
use
using the placards, but it sounds like from Cynthia's discussion that Chris's real concern is first thing in the morning that they're not there. So we've had that issue even at half-hour parking in front of Dunkin' Donuts. The cars are there overnight and they're not ticketed. So maybe the direction really is, Laz, you need to be in at 6 when we have the principal problems and direct it that way to manage it.
So this is really.
Because that helps with snow removal too. Yeah.
This is really in the weeds, but when anybody who's familiar with meter maid law, I guess, like. What evidence are you able to use to determine how long a car has been there? Hypothetically, Laz shows up and there's dew all over the car that only is there from overnight parking. Are they able to make a judgment based on that? Or is that like, who knows how this dew arose, even though you kind of know, or frost, dew, you touch the hood of the car, it's ice cold, if it was running, all these types of things that logic would tell you it's been there more than,
Overnight.
but is that like, can you
Yes.
take it based on that?
I have told them to do that.
Okay, so
If they
we're
say-
not,
I mean. whether
well, I'm
it's
just
or
saying,
not,
and we can tell them that, but
And
they
they
say,
do.
well, that's illegal.
No.
Their appeals through our system, then they could go to court after that.
Right.
So nobody's, I don't
Are
think
they-
anybody's taking us to court.
Are they like to mark the tires? I think Kurt did that. Can you say, can you mark with chalk?
Yeah, well, they have the handhelds, so it's all in a system, so they
Yes.
mark what time and then they go back. and then they do the ticketing.
Once you establish, like, right, if you see the car, then you start a clock from that point forward, that's one thing. I'm thinking like when you arrive and you're trying to figure out, well, how long has this car been here? It's 8:30 in the morning, I kind of want to figure this out. I mean, I feel like there's ways to kind of do that. It's,
Yeah, they ticket immediately.
Like,
I think with their photography and all that thing,
That's
they'll
true.
get the dew, they'll get the snow,
Yeah.
so it's obviously we're parked there.
My preference would be is it sounds like Chris wants a solution. He's trying to come up with a solution. Maybe if we're hearing him loud and clear saying, you have a problem, we're asking, you're not the only one we're seeing this at various other locations. We'd rather up our enforcement and make that recommendation and see if that works. But I mean, we've been asking Laz to do various things and it falls on deaf ears every single time.
Well,
Ryan's-
I don't know.
Not that it is.
To Ryan's point, though, the 2-hour thing and then going to Dog Lane is a good one, I think. So I think 1 hour, and it's up to UConn Health if they're gonna be there longer to communicate with their patients, to put a placard on. Otherwise, they're getting ticketed. And then we communicate to Laz, if you want ticket revenue, you're missing, you're missing some good opportunities here.
It's a
Yeah.
staffing issue, honestly. They're having trouble finding part-time. It's not the
Yeah.
easiest jobs to try to fill. I mean, I'm just trying to be honest about it, and,
Yeah,
I can have that conversation with Keith and Stothy to see if they can start earlier,
We've been dealing with this
but
for
we
Yeah.
have.
9
And,
years.
and I just don't know whether that's, I
So
mean,
do you
we can
think-
ask, but we don't have. Well.
do you think
if
the
you
1
give me
hour
that
thing?
direction, I can pursue it.
Do you think the 1 hour request would work? I mean, how do you think?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay,
But to John's point, we're solving the person who runs the operations of the Yukon Health Center.
Yep.
Let's see what happens.
Yep.
And then if we want to use the caveat that you need to use these signs, that's one way to do it. In the
Yeah, and
meantime, I can have the larger conversation with Laz, to Derek's point, about hours and see if, maybe this is the opportunity now with Jess
Yeah.
leaving, that we look at the hours and maybe it's 6 to 2, and then you have the other staff that's not management that's
Yeah.
downtown.
Yeah.
My biggest concern in this transition is making sure that Laz is fully staffed in the downtown. That's, with this change, I don't want to
right.
come in like I did yesterday and the gate wasn't up and the Library Express people had to come to me to get in. So
Yeah.
that's not what I'm looking for here.
Yeah.
Sorry, a little bit of a deviation from
Yeah,
what we're talking
So
about.
somebody
but-
want to make
Because
a
my
motion?
concern is if we go to 1 hour, people start getting tickets, they're not gonna be upset with UConn Health. They're gonna be upset with us.
But we can
It's all
explain it
our
to
fault
them,
always.
Maybe we put the sign 1 hour parking with placard.
Good.
UConn Health parking 1 hour must have placard in window or something. We make a special sign.
That could work.
Which they already have.
Does it say that in the sign?
No, but
Oh,
it says Yukon parking.
But if we said
Or with the
underneath
pla-
must have
placard
placard
only.
in, or whatever we call the thing in the window.
so then that it's increases the likelihood somebody does it, because it's not just like, because somebody who parks there wouldn't know to ask or whatever,
Yeah.
so you're kind of relying on staff to say, oh, here's your placard. Now, people might be more inclined, do I need to get a placard from you? And then it kind of just.
Well, you need to turn it in, because that's the other thing,
Right.
they keep it, then they
Right.
come back tomorrow and park there, because.
Mm,
I'd support that.
All right, we'll go, yeah, let's
Support that.
pilot it.
So I'll move to alter the times in front of the UConn Health Center, the 2 spots from 2 hour to 1 hour with the caveat of placard must be present. I think that's
beyond 1 hour.
beyond 1 hour.
No,
I think it's
If
definitely
you're
period
using the,
if
I think
you
it's
park
just
here,
period.
you have
to have a
to go
placard.
in, get a placard, put it on.
Yep.
I second that.
Right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's 4-0, passes. Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia.
Right, I might not be able to. I'll get back to Chris, but since I'm gone next week, I'll have to work with.
Thanks,
that.
Cynthia.
We gotta get the sign and all that. It's not gonna happen like,
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is the villages at Four Corners, mixed use development. Turn it over to Jennifer. We'll turn it over to you.
So we have Paul Smith and John Schmidt, and is Mike Dion is with the other application. So Paul and
Oh,
John,
no, Mike, I think Mike and, excuse me, Jen, and Mike Shipley and Mike Dean are both with us on this as traffic.
We're
The
both
tra-
traffic engineers on the project, right? for the applicant.
I'm sorry, if Paul, if you want to just introduce your team and then give an overview, and then we can have you share your screen, that would be terrific.
Okay. Good morning. For the record, my name is Attorney Paul Smith. I represent Yami Development LLC, which is the owner and applicant for a project known as the Villages at Four Corners. With me today from BL Companies is John Smith, who is the chief engineer on this project, and Mike Dion and Mike Shepley, who are both traffic, I believe, engineers who have worked on this project also. So I'll just give you a brief overview and then turn it over to John and his team. This property is 8.74 acres. It's located on the corner of Stores Road and Middle Turnpike. In Mansfield, it's known as 1659 Stores Road and 625 Middle Turnpike. About 2.8 acres of the property is currently developed and operating. That's, you would notice, there's the Hops 44, the Toast Restaurant, Dunkin' Donuts, the gas station with the convenience store, and Mike's Pizza, I think, is there. We are proposing on the remaining 6.75 acres, a mixed-use development with 3 new buildings. 2 of the buildings will be apartment buildings with approximately 116 apartment units, and a 3rd building, which will be 12,000 square feet of commercial space. We have been through the wetlands process, have submitted our application with the Planning and Zoning Commission for a special use permit. I would just say as an intro to the traffic, I know that BL and the applicant have worked pretty diligently in terms of trying to develop an appropriate traffic and not only vehicle traffic, but a pedestrian traffic plan to sort of interconnect with the abutting properties, because you've just recently, there was an approval for the Standard at Four Corners, which is a large residential apartment complex development. And so they taken particular interest in, of course, interconnectiveness, also to connect in terms of traffic, the existing uses to the new site. So having said that, I'll turn it over to John, and he can probably share a screen that shows the actual site plan overall and give you a little more detailed overview.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, John Schmitz with BL. I'll just give a brief overview of the site here. And let's see, just I'm going to share first off the existing conditions. So you should be seeing an aerial view of what the project looks like today, what the site looks like today. We're on the northwest corner of Route 44, Route 195. You can see that, correct?
No,
No. Okay.
We're not seeing anything, John.
Hang on just a second. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is just an aerial of the site today. Again, the northwest corner of Route 44 and 195. Currently, there are several commercial uses at the corner of the intersection. There's the existing gas station with Dunkin' Donuts, the drive-through. There's a pizza shop in the corner. There's also Toast and Hops 44 restaurant, which share the same building just to the west of the gas station. The bulk of our development is proposed to the north. It was an undeveloped parcel at this point in time. It was previously a mobile home park. Years past, it's all been removed. The site is now vegetated. There's an open field. There's various wetlands and vegetation throughout the site. And I will jump to just really, you can see some of the sidewalks that are out there today along 195. They do turn around 144, and we'll be extending that on the next plan I'll show you. And then there's also the bike line that goes down to Discovery Drive and is along Middle Turnpike. So let me show you this is the site plan. This is the proposed site plan. I'll briefly run through what we're doing here, and then I'll turn it over to our traffic guys. So Stores Road is along the top of the page here. Middle Turnpike along the right-hand side of the sheet here. I'll just leave some marks. The existing gas station building is at this location in the corner. Hops Company, Toast 44 is at this location, also with access from 44. What we propose to do is create 3 new buildings out here. One would be a commercial building at this location, approximately 12,200 square feet of new commercial space there. And then 2 new residential buildings, one residential building at this location at the far north side of the site, which is a townhouse building containing 14 units, and then another multi-story apartment building located in a north-south orientation at this location of the site. As far as access goes, today there's existing signalized access from 195. It's also at the intersection of Route 320. That's at this location here. We have current access. There's also access to Middle Turnpike from the gas station at this location here. And then a little further to the west, there's another driveway for access to the Hops Company Toast right here. We'll be proposing a new right-in, right-out driveway at the far northerly end of our site at this location to 195. And then with regards to pedestrian access, again, extending the existing sidewalk from the existing signalized drive to the north along 195. We will be providing a new connection, sidewalk connection to the standard, which is shown at this location in the north. They'll be extending a sidewalk connection to their property where we will meet that location. Provide sidewalks throughout our development to connect all the buildings as well as the commercial space. We have various crosswalks to provide access back and forth. And then we'll also be extending sidewalks to the north, rather to the west on Route 44 at this location down to the Hops Company. And then there were some comments that we're looking at addressing to provide additional sidewalks and crosswalk signage in various areas throughout the site and along the roadways. With that, I'm just going to turn things over to Mike Shepley, Mike Dion, and I'd be happy to leave this up and I can zoom into any of the areas you want, unless Mike, if you guys want to share any of the exhibits in your report. Thanks.
Sure. I guess what I'll just say is based on our report, we have minimum impact to the surrounding traffic network. We looked and analyzed both the AM and PM peak hours under this site plan here. I guess, do we want to go through the comments with Weston and Sampson, or do you want me to just give a little rundown of the general traffic items for the report?
Jen, it's whatever you guys would prefer. We can do this, whatever.
I think a high level, I mean, I think this group, it's up to the other folks on the
Right.
committee, but I think keep it high level.
Okay.
Unless folks would like to. proceed.
Sure. So, I mean,
Well,
oh,
the
sorry.
side
Go ahead.
outcome is for you to make comments, to provide them with guidance, to see, to look at your charge or look at our charge and see
Okay.
if their plan is acceptable.
That's so high level is good with me.
Yep. Yeah, I had
Okay.
considered hearing a presentation eerily similar to this last week at the Economic Development Commission meeting on the project. So this is good to hear it twice, more sinks in.
All right, sure. Well, basically what we looked at was the intersections of Willington Hill Road and Route 44 at 195 there. Based on the analysis of the existing no build and build periods, we didn't have that much of an impact from this development. We used ITE Trip Gen 11th edition, which is the latest, using the standards provided by DOT. This will be under the review of DOT during the OSTA process and then an encroachment permit. So they'll have 2 opportunities to actually review this. we're very well aware. I know in the comments that there's a comment about going to OSTA. We're well aware of that. Hopefully we'll vet out everything through that process. But I mean, from a high level overview, this development won't have that much of a significant impact to the surrounding area. The site distances can be maintained or improved, especially with that right turn out. That'll also relieve conflict points because you're not allowing left turns out of there. I know all the driveway cuts on Route 44, they're of under different properties, but I know there's a comment in the comments from Weston and Sampson to look at them. We can. The issue is if they're owned by another property owner, we really can't do anything to tell them to improve the site distances out there. So we can look at it, but I don't know if we'll be able to really enforce any of that. Through the encroachment permit process, the DOT will also be reviewing the site distances. So
One question to that effect, doesn't it appear you're making improvements to the adjacent property under this scenario?
we're not
Looks like
at
the
this point.
at the entrance at Wellington Hill Road you are.
We are, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. So, yeah, all the properties are under the same ownership currently. So we'll be making improvements to the parking area for Toast and Hops Company for the most part. The corner
Well, then,
development, the gas station would be unchanged.
so with that, we can look at those and just make sure that they're have appropriate site distances then. So, but I mean, from a high level overview, there's really not many impacts to the surrounding traffic. So, I could answer any other questions you have, or we could go through the peer review comments.
Isn't there a loading zone associated with the Hops 44? And how is loading going to be addressed at the proposed retail and restaurant building?
John, can you answer that?
Yeah, I can adjust. So the so there is,
I see another curb cut.
yeah, so there's an existing curb cut for Toast Hops Company. I'll just up in Google Earth here. You can see how they're doing some of their loading today in this area. I think they've got some refuse collection here where some of their loading's happening. This area we're not touching. It'll remain unchanged. And so obviously you can see the end of the sidewalk here on the right will be extending sidewalks along the front. So there'll be a new apron in here. But as far as maneuverability, this area will remain unchanged. Jumping back to the site plan. We do propose a new loading zone at this location, which is going to be used for the new commercial building at this location. We do have dumpsters throughout the site as well. One of the comments from the Weston Sampson was asking us for turning movements. So we've prepared documents showing maneuverability, truck access for not only our loading dock, but also for the proposed dumpster locations throughout the site. And this location on the side is where the current loading is for Hops today, and that will remain unchanged.
Can you describe how far are you planning to put a sidewalk along the full frontage of your property, heading along 44?
We're not. Currently, we're stopping the sidewalk at the existing driveway and jumping back. I'll show you some of the hurdles we have. So again, sidewalk ends roughly just at the driveway to the gas station on 144. As we look to the west, we'll be extending that sidewalk to the driveway here for Hops. It will come down to here. We've also been asked to extend a sidewalk to the front door here. So we'll be providing a new sidewalk along this location. The reason why we're not extending the sidewalk further west is you can see there's a guide rail at this location, and that guide rail is protecting there's a head wall, a drainage head wall that's just a few feet off the edge of road. And that's carrying a stormwater culvert under the road discharges. This is where we have some wetlands along our property. So the guide rail prohibits us from installing a sidewalk, which is why we're not extending it beyond the driveway. There's nowhere for the sidewalk to go. Even if we brought the sidewalk behind the guide rail, it wouldn't go anywhere because of the stormwater that's there. And again, I think if I jump back to the plan, you can see that here where we've got a wetland area, so stream in this area here, which is where the head wall is, and there's not available right away to install a sidewalk in this area, which is why we chose to end it at the proposed driveway, or at the existing driveway rather.
But it seems like then you're just leaving somebody in limbo if somebody was, vision impaired. At least they'd have a crossing on the other side in a refuge versus just leaving them in the middle of a intersection or a driveway.
Well, I'm not opposed to if you're asking, can we create a crosswalk here with a dead end sidewalk? That's fine. I mean, we can certainly do that. I'm just saying I can't extend the sidewalk to the limits of our property because of the guide rail. We can certainly bring the sidewalk up and stop it at the guide rail. That's not an issue. If that's something that's amenable.
I think the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to be very, they're going to want us, they generally want to see a sidewalk along the full frontage. It's not, that's how they've interpreted this, like, for example, for the standard, then they let DOT determine if that's going to be feasible. But so I think anything you can do to promote pedestrian access along there is I think when you're presenting to planning and zoning, you're going to need to kind of demonstrate that.
Okay, we can certainly review this and see if we can come up with another alternative. Again, the guide rails there as a safety measure to protect the culvert. So the state's not going to allow me to move that. So then that pushes us to look for a solution where we can keep that in place, and basically the sidewalk would need to move onto private property and then dead end at the wetlands.
Yeah, does that make sense, Derek?
That's about the best we could do there.
Right. No, I mean, it's essentially what had happened to the standards. So it's the same exact thing.
Right.
Scenario.
Right.
And then to the north, it looks like that loading zone is only 36 feet long. I didn't have a dimension in length, but it doesn't appear that would. This is the loading zone that's currently in yellow. Yes, correct. 12-foot wide. It doesn't look like it could accommodate any of the typical delivery vehicles that would be expected.
Again, we're looking at that right now. I know we've prepared some plans to address the comments, and I don't off the top of my head recall what size vehicle. I know we're taking a look at, again, to your point, can a vehicle get in here in a single movement, and do we need to extend this area at all? We certainly have room. We can move. We could shift to the east and to the west if we need to lengthen that at all. But it's certainly something that we're looking at now to provide, not only the radiuses to turn the vehicle in, but to provide us space large enough for the largest vehicle.
And then
we are looking at that now.
Okay. And then the only other concern I had was the presence of those parking spots at the entrance of the intersection with 320. When you have a backing up movement, it looks like somebody would remain in Stores Road, that bank of parking.
These spaces.
Yes.
Again, something we're actually also looking at based on the comments. There are some parking requirements we're taking a look at, how we can meet those, where we're at currently to provide enough parking for the whole development. And we're seriously looking at eliminating some, if not all, of those spaces at this time.
Okay. One of the long-term thoughts or goal projects in this corridor is basically to incorporate roundabouts at the two intersections at 320 and 44. Could you maybe speak to, what hindrances could exist there at this point? Because it does, I think from our conceptual review, there would be some concern that the roundabout wouldn't be able to be fit in that intersection.
Well, I was provided with a copy of the schematic roundabout plan. Attorney Smith had provided that to us a while back, so I'm aware of the concept. And I don't think it's advanced beyond that, but there's the potential that the state would need to do takings of property in order to fit the roundabouts there, or they may choose to go with smaller. I think as the design progressed, that would be something they'd have to look seriously about, how they would get everything to fit.
So I guess, so when I look at the proposed, retail restaurant space, I mean, there may be other considerations. I'm not an engineer certainly, but I guess it's on this schematic, the upper right kind of corner of that space, that seems to be what could be bleeding into whatever the dimensions of the roundabout would need to be. So I guess, do we know, or do you know at this point whether or not, as shown here, there's overlap? And if there is there enough flexibility or adaptability within your site to, I guess, to use a layperson's term, shift the footprint of that building enough to accommodate your project needs, but preserve the future option of the roundabout, or better preserve that option?
John, could you just give a dimension from the center of the existing intersection to the corner of the building? I'm just curious of how big of a diameter that would be.
So you can see here, the dimension is 22 feet here. This is a 19-foot parking space, and I think we've got about it varies, but roughly 10 feet of space.
Well, I'm saying
Sidewalk
from
here.
It's
Can you
about
just-
85 feet.
it's about 85 feet. Okay, yeah, it's gonna be tight to get the roundabout and fit that building.
Are they looking at a 2-lane roundabout? I haven't seen that concept. I apologize. This is Jeff Santa Cruz, Weston and Sampson.
Yeah.
The state will only do single right now. They won't-
Okay.
Yeah, that's typically what we've run into is the state's very, they're apprehensive with going with 2-lane roundabouts because motorists don't really. can't
Yeah,
really
do they do
indicate.
traditional just straight single lane, or do they do like a hybrid where it has a left turn for
they-
major movements?
I mean, down in Salem, they have the hybrid left turn movement on was it 82 and 85 down there. So they've done that in the past. It's just more of a traditional 2-lane roundabout there
Okay.
against you. So it would be tight. You might be able to shift the
Oh, thank you.
round. There you go. So there's actually not a lot of deflection on that either.
No.
So it's very conceptual. So I mean.
And I don't know who developed this. This was obviously provided to us.
We had 3 days to get something together.
It's not
So,
bad for
I mean-
3 days.
So what have
No,
you
it
got
looks
there? Is
pretty
that
good.
about a 120, 130 foot diameter roundabout? Is that what that is, give or take?
Approximately, to the outer dimension.
Yeah.
It's a smaller.
But all the approaches to these intersections is 1 lane in, 1 lane out. So
Right.
it doesn't make sense why you would need 2-lane roundabout when the approaches are single lane. I mean,
Well, today the approaches are multi-lane
Right.
only because of the
on the
light.
main line, and then the side.
A half mile out, there are single lane roads in.
Right, yeah, I mean, the reason for that is once you get a signal, you're trying to process twice as many cars in the same green time without backing your queues up, 1,000 feet. And then that's really why intersections, you double up the lanes, is to just try and give you more capacity per green second, so to speak. So a lot of times what is a 2-lane approach can be a 1-lane for a roundabout because it's a more continuous movement and you're not really stopping cars. If you figure 120 foot diameter, one thing you got to consider is there's not only do you have the pavement of the 120 foot, but then you've got a grass strip from the roundabout to that shared use path, and then you've got the shared use path. So if you figure 120, say a 5 to 6 foot grass strip and another 8 to 10 foot bike on either side, that starts to make that entire roundabout closer to 160 feet, which would put it if it's centered on that intersection, pretty close to the corner of the building. As drawn conceptually, without shifting it, say, more onto 195, 320, I mean, type of thing, if you're centering it right on the middle.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing we were incorporating was making sure we got enough shift at that intersection with 320 and if we shifted it to the upper portion of the site. But I mean, anything's possible with the deflector islands, so.
Yeah, I'm only just trying to give, I mean, we were talking about overall sides. I'm trying to kind of make sure people consider those outer pieces, the bike and that grass strip.
Yep, absolutely. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just making sure that whatever's proposed is cognizant of that plan is really, I think, our only comment is.
Yeah, I just don't want to, it's a big project, a lot of reasons why it may not come to
Move forward.
fruition, but don't want this to be the reason why it doesn't, I guess.
We can certainly take a look at options and opportunities to, adjust the location of that building.
No, we
And
appreciate it.
schematically, because of the plan you've given us, we can schematically lay that in and see, see what the impact potentially could be. And we'll certainly take a look at that.
Yeah, it's definitely the tighter side of the two right of ways. So definitely some understanding of that. But thank you very much for the
Yeah, I appreciate
consideration.
that.
All right, any other questions or anything else? Like, do you want to look at anything interior, any interior flow or safety?
I mean, I think the comments definitely addressed quite a bit there.
Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not really a town issue. I would think that having, well, I don't know if you call it direct or indirect access, but access to Hops Toast Building off of 195 now, as opposed to having to go around because there's no existing connection between the gas station. I think that's helpful for people and for the businesses, I would think, right?
Just to be able to navigate fire apparatus through that whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Paul and John, you've been in touch with, I know we had our overview meeting last week, but you've been in touch with Adam Libros and our fire marshal, just to make sure that you've dotted all your i's and crossed all your t's to make sure that you're meeting that before you have to make adjustments after the special permit is approved.
Yes, we're reaching out to a number of folks in the town,
Okay,
including the fire marshal. Yes.
great.
Thank you.
I think from a traffic authority,
Yeah.
we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going to support the peer reviewers' comments at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Next on the agenda is 497 Middle Turnpike, 17 Cedar Swamp Road, and 3 parcels known as Cedar Swamp Road. Jen?
So we have Joe Williams, Chuck Lee, and Tim O'Neill and Maximo Polanco, who I've not met yet, but if you all just want to give similar to what the previous applicant did, a high-level overview, and then just talk about the traffic and your study. And I know you just got the comments from Weston and Sampson yesterday, but hopefully you've had a chance to look at them. And just kind of, then Jeff can kind of chime in as needed.
Sure, I'll start us off. Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Williams. I'm a land use attorney with Shipman and Goodwin in Hartford, and we're all glad to be here with you on behalf of your applicant, CMC Stores SPV LLC. As Jennifer mentioned, my client Chuck Lee is here as well. And I'll just give a short introduction, turn it to Tim O'Neill, who is our project engineer with Langen, to give you an overview of the project and the site plan. And then Tim will turn it to his colleagues to discuss our traffic study and the comments that we have received from Weston and Sampson. The property at issue is at 497 Middle Turnpike, and 3 parcels abutting it on the north side of Middle Turnpike at the intersection with Cedar Swamp Road, just a little ways to the west of the property that you were just discussing. It's about a 64-acre parcel. You all probably know it as the golf course parcel. has an abandoned golf course on it and several related retail, restaurant, and other buildings. Also has a cell tower and a cell tower pad. And we are proposing a 262 unit multifamily residential community with what we are excited about is a diverse mix of housing options in the form of apartments, townhouses, and mansion style units, all concentrated on the previously developed and disturbed portion of the property, maintaining more than half of the property as forested buffer area. So with that, I think I should stop there and turn it to Tim O'Neill. We have a special permit application pending before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we're glad to be here with you and look forward to hearing your comments. Take it away, Tim.
All right, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. And yeah, as Joe had mentioned, the property is located at 497 Middle Turnpike. Here you can see the site highlighted in yellow with the property line. The total acreage on the parcel is just over 63 acres. Our development will be located in the southeastern 15 acres of development where the previous 9-hole golf course is located. I'll show you that region in just a second here. You can see it's located just west of the Four Corners intersection, and Yukon is located to the southeast of the site here. As Joe had mentioned, we've got 3 different styles of buildings for apartments and townhome mixture, kind of shown at the bottom here in this image. And moving into the next slide, you can see that this is the overall parcel just zoomed into the southern region. You can kind of see where the existing golf course is today in the tree clearings. That's roughly where our proposed development is taking place in the previously disturbed areas. Moving into our site plan here. You can see our proposed development here, again, mostly on top of the previously disturbed 15 acres in the southeastern corner. The main primary daily use access for the site is located along 497 it's located along Middle Turnpike along the south of the plan here highlighted in yellow. The main entrance is located right here across from an existing road, Birch Road, across from the entrance, and we also have frontage along Cedar Swamp Road that runs along the eastern property line. You notice the site does have a secondary access, which will be used for maintenance and emergency access only off Cedar Swamp Road with a 20-foot wide gravel access drive, and that site access will also be gated with keys and appropriate access given to emergency services. And if I could switch back to the Google Maps quickly. Again, our site is located just off the northwest corner of Cedar Swamp and Middle Turnpike, located here. Zooming in, we can see that there are currently no sidewalks in the area on 497 on the north, at Middle Turnpike on the north side of the roadway here. On the southern side, there is a multi-use trail that goes down Birch Road, comes up to the Middle Turnpike intersection, takes a right and runs in an easterly direction up Middle Turnpike to the Four Corners intersection. And back to the site plan. So our proposed site, again, 262 mixed apartment units with parking throughout the site. The site is generally in 3 separate regions, a southern, a central, and a northern. Parking's been distributed based on the density of the units, provide parking at each unit appropriate for the amount of living space provided in each region, and 2 trash compactors and receptacles on site have been provided, a larger one for the southern 2 regions and a single one for the northern region up here. Pedestrian access has also been provided throughout the site with sidewalk connections along roadways, access to front doors, and ADA compliant routes from ADA compliant parking stalls to entrances at the buildings. And pedestrian access has also been provided out to the right of way, but again, with no public sidewalks along Middle Turnpike on the northern side. There weren't any other existing sidewalks to connect into, so we've provided a connection to the public roadway if there were ever development along the road to bring a sidewalk down to this region. And with that, I'll pass it over to Maximo, our traffic engineer, to discuss some of the results in our traffic impact analysis.
Good morning, everybody. Maximo Polanco with Langen. So we provided a traffic impact analysis for the entire development. The traffic impact study was done based on the latest standards using ITE Trip Generation 11th edition. And in a brief summary, we've demonstrated that all the intersections that we analyzed, which are 5 basically, are going to be basically having the same level of service as the existing conditions. And we've demonstrated with that there's minimal impact that is going to have this project will have minimal impact to the surrounding roadway network. We received several comments from Weston and Sampson, which we are comfortable with. I think the comments are very straightforward. Some of them are coordination with OSTA and CTDOT, which we understand and we will do. And then there are other minor comments in terms of let's say the cycle length of the signalized intersections that we analyzed, which we did coordinate with OSTA those, and we can provide documentation of the latest or current signal operations at those signals that we could show you guys. But in general, overall, we've demonstrated that the entire area could operate easily with our development. Also to add is that we did include the Four Corners development that was previously presented here, and then also included the Stanford at Four Corners, which is the development north of the villas at Four Corners. So in that sense, we're not only growing the traffic data based on historical volumes, we're also adding the committed developments that are being reviewed by the town right now. So to take into consideration what will be the future conditions for the area. So I don't know if Jeff from Weston Sampson wants to add specific questions, but I think your comments were pretty straightforward and we're okay with them.
Yeah, if it's okay with the authority, I can certainly highlight a couple of things that maybe weren't necessarily mentioned here that that I saw. One of the things is obviously the signal timing. I understand. I just want to coordinate that, make sure OSTA and CONDOT have the same timings, because CONDOT actually maintains the cabinets. And when we did the previous signal projects, the applicant actually reached out directly to CONDOT to get the signal timings out of the cabinets, and they were indicated they were coordinated. So I just want to make sure that OSTA is not going off a permit that was submitted a few years back, and that's not, make sure that you're talking to CONDOT specifically for those timings.
We can do that coordination without any issues, and just to let you know, the coordination we did was in March 2023.
Yep, no, and I just, if you've got documentation that they've indicated what they provided you with the signal timings, it didn't match what we had seen on previous projects we've reviewed in this area. That's not to say timing changes weren't made, but it's rare that you go from coordinated to uncoordinated. So that's why it caught my eye. We did notice in some of the synchro timings that between your no build and your build, you had changed your entire cycle length. Those should be for the build, no build should be the same. And then if you propose improvements to make it better, that becomes an improved, because that's not an adaptive signal out there. So it's not going to automatically change its cycle length, in those times.
No, 100%. And I checked that, and I think there could be a confusion because the build and the no build have the same cycle length. It's just the one with proposing improvements that we're changing. I would say changing it, but again, we can look that out and we'll provide a formal response to you and make sure that there's no changes there.
Okay. The other thing is obviously provide a no build network so that you've done your existing and then you went right to build. A no build's nice to have because then we can check the volumes and whatnot, make sure everything was additive together correctly.
And that is included. If you go to, let's say, page 8 of the report, we do provide a no build figure. And Tim is showing it. So I'm not sure.
That's not a figure though. If that's okay, maybe I misunderstood what you were showing. Then I apologize.
No worries.
When I read in the text, I was thinking that was what you added for the development. So
No. This is basically everything. This is
Okay.
existing, grown based on the growth that we use and added the committed developments.
Okay, it's possible I skipped over it. I
That's
apologize.
okay. No worries. It's all
Been a
good.
couple of, as you can see today, we've reviewed a couple of these in the last. couple of
That's
days,
okay.
so, and I apologize. If
okay.
it's there, it's not a problem. One thing I will note that was of a concern me is you showed your sidewalk, as you mentioned, going to the 44 roadway and just dead ending. Very similar to the comment I think we heard earlier about somebody who's visually impaired just suddenly being dumped into the roadway with no kind of understanding. There is a shared use path that comes up Birch and continues on the south side of 44. So we would highly recommend that this development provide a connection across the street at a minimum to that. And that kind of ties into the fact that there is, according to the WRTD website, there is a bus pullout and stop just down the street on Birch Street. And that would avail those residents to be able to use that potentially as an access or to connect on to the, since you're providing so much bike storage, to connect to the shared use. It may even allow you to qualify for a reduction in parking because you are now providing a sidewalk and connection to a transit stop within the required distance per the regulations. So something that definitely, should be considered for connectivity. I know the authority has mentioned about, certainly extending a sidewalk along the entire frontage has been their kind of standard, and I would support that as long as we can treat, the ends of each end of it safely. One of the other comments I had was the alignment of your driveway with Birch Road. If it is possible to you're quite a bit offset between the two. And if it is possible to work to try and shift that a little bit more to provide better alignment of the two roadways. It just kind of, the left turns out right now directly conflict, whereas if they were directly opposite each other, they have a little bit more ability to turn inside of each other. And the through movements now are also making an S turn to go across the intersection rather than a straight through. There was a number of little questions on parking and some things. There were some suggestions like you have a lot of EV spaces on site, but I noticed you didn't provide any that have ADA accessibility. That is something I would recommend that you do look at as a possibility if there's space to provide at least one in each area, because there are going to be, you have units that are designated as ADA in multiple buildings. So that should be taken a look at. I did ask if you had talked to the recycling and coordinator in terms of the number of compactors and whatnot that you're providing. I know on other facilities, we provided more that are closer to the buildings. It's quite a walk if you're carrying trash from some of these buildings to your location. So it's something definitely talk and have a discussion with them.
So Jeff, and we're going to have a meeting on Tuesday to kind of talk about all sorts of things. So maybe we should focus the broader comments during that meeting, if that works for you all.
And we're just traffic.
Yeah, they're just traffic.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think because it relates to where I was going with that is it relates a little bit to circulation. If suddenly you got to put some space, these dumpsters in other locations, the truck turns kind of have to now be adjusted.
That's a good point, Jeff. Thank you.
I apologize. I probably should have let in with that. You will have to provide sightline diagrams for your main entrance onto 44 in coordination with the CONDOT standards, which when you read how they word it is slightly different than how AASHTO looks at it in terms of the offset distances and whatnot. And just verify that, through that with a profile and that none of your landscaping is in conflict. We did have some questions about some of your bike parking spaces, both in number and location. So that's something that please take a look at to make sure that it is meeting the regulations. I didn't see some of the crosswalks didn't have ADA ramps located or didn't appear that they were designed even if they're not officially designed, but some sort of symbol or something to indicate. Your ADA parking spaces, ADA requires parking spaces to be located along the shortest possible route to the accessible entrance. It was difficult for me to determine what was your accessible entrance here, because when I looked at the architectural plans, I saw multiple units in the building. So just clarify that where you've provided your ADA spaces is the shortest route to the accessible entrance. Just kind of go through. A lot of it is signing. Some of the signs aren't labeled, and there appears to be there's letters there, A, B, C, D, but I couldn't find a legend that necessarily mentioned A, B, C on the site plans. That's why they're way in the back. Okay. That's why I was having a hard time finding them. The parallel parking spaces was a big one. I know the regulations for the town don't really describe the difference between parallel and perpendicular, but the spaces you've provided are 9 by 20. First of all, that falls below the minimum width required by the town, which is 9.5, and while it does fall slightly above the 19 that their standard says, it does fall below the national average or national standard of 22 feet. So I think you may have difficulty with large vehicles trying to use those, especially the couple around, I apologize which building it is here. Building 800. You actually have parallel parking spaces that are located in a dead end. So I'm kind of curious how people actually use those spaces. Because no matter which way I pull into that space, I've got to make about a 5-point turn to get back out or get back in. So it's something I think you need to look at. Maybe there's a possibility of relocating those spaces elsewhere, make them more usable. We talked about, obviously, the operations and the signal. As far as the access road, please make sure you provide the turning movements for the actual entrance onto Cedar Swamp Road for the emergency access. I saw you have them kind of going through, but it didn't look like you actually had them turning in and out from the side road to make sure that the radiuses there are appropriate. Let's see. There was some appeared on the turning movement plan, it was a little difficult to tell what the difference was between the edge of the vehicle and the wheels. If it's possible to either use a different line type or different colors where they get real close together and they're right up on top of the curb line, it was difficult to tell if the wheels were actually going over the curb. Couple spots, it looks like they were. So if you could take another look at that, that would be great. I know there is a couple spots where the trash truck actually appeared to overrun the curb, but given the scale of the plan, I mean, perhaps if it's a little bigger scale, it might be easier to see. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to scroll through the letter here. I think that was the majority of traffic related. Like I said, the big one was just trying to coordinate the what the signal timings were, and that was just to kind of prove that you didn't have that off-site impact at the signal, if the timings were incorrect.
Yeah, and we'll look at that.
Yep, certainly. You mentioned you, and that's not a problem.
Great, and Jeff, yeah, and I'll try and I'll keep this brief. This isn't the response to
Formal
comment discussion.
response.
So yeah, right. So, but I have answers to everything that you've discussed. So I'll touch on some of them quickly. So the crosswalk across Route 44. So we stayed away from that for this application intentionally, just because this is a high-speed roadway and there's no signalized intersection within close proximity to the project. So we'd have to work through a safe crossing. I know we do have very large sight lines. There are 2 other intersections in close proximity or drive entrance. So it's certainly something we're going to look into with the DOT. So we'll continue to chase that one down. Sidewalks along the frontage of the property is certainly something we're open to. If the town would like to see something like a connection coming along the frontage of our property and teed up for a future tie-in from Cedar Swamp or, to the west, it's something we can definitely look into. We just want to make sure we're not providing any confusing dead ends for anyone in the town. So, we'll continue to coordinate that, open to the idea there. The driveway alignment with Birch Road, the thought is that we were, kind of keeping our driveway a little bit further to the west here to help provide a little bit more queuing length for Cedar Swamp driving in to help those intersections. It is slightly offset, but it shouldn't be anything that significantly deters traffic or causes an issue, especially with the low volume that we're expecting to actually make the movement across to Birch Road into the property and the other direction too. So again, something we can continue to look at, and we'll respond to that in comments. The parking and the bike count, I think, we could have spelled it out a little bit clearer up here where some of these were coming from, but the townhome or the mansion style buildings, which there are 3 of them located throughout the site, 1, 2, and 3 up in the corner. These actually contain, let me go to the zoomed in one so you can see this a little bit better. There's actually garage parking stalls, exterior parking stalls, and long-term bike parking internal to the building and in the driveway. So I think that's where the rectification in the parking stall got lost there.
Differences, yeah. Okay.
Yep. So that should be that one. And then the trash compactors. So I think you found our primary trash compactor for the bottom 2 regions that I was speaking to earlier. And that's located just off the right side of the page over here. There is actually a second one located in the northern part of the facility up here, a little bit smaller. And this first one over here accepts a larger compactor size, and we sized the truck turning movements for the larger flatbed roll-off compactor in this area. We are certainly going to put together a truck turning movement with some larger scales. We can take a look at some of these critical areas, and we'll provide the movements to the in and out at the emergency exit and some blow ups for some of the more critical zones too. So we can certainly do that. It's not an issue. Sight lines, again, we'll get these added into the report and on the plans if you need them. There shouldn't be any issue. We did look at them from the correct definitions, and we've got very clear and long sight lines, so that shouldn't cause any type of issue here. With the offsets, we missed the existing vegetation that we're leaving, and our proposed landscape plan will certainly avoid planting anything in that view shed as well. The ADA ramps, yeah, we can absolutely label those, make sure I get those in the plans. The parking stalls, will confirm routes from ADA parking through the building to the units, ADA entrance locations, and we can label those on our actual site plans too. These ADA locations are somewhat flexible. We've graded out a few options if there were changes in the plans that we could actually relocate these without changing any grading or substantial operation to the site here. So certainly identify those and make sure those are clear. Parallel parking, we can take a look at resizing those stalls, making them a little bit wider and longer to accommodate some of those movements, specifically the ones over here. The intention was to come in and do a hammerhead and then back in or pull into these. We can look at those movements too and kind of clarify those. In terms of the parking counts itself, we're actually providing more than what we are required to right now, taking credit for some of our reductions. So if we did need to lose 1 or 2 stalls while we're adding a couple feet to some of these, we could certainly accommodate that and still be within the regulations here. We also have some room to kind of expand some of these and bump down the parking a little bit if we need to make those a little bit wider. So again, not an issue, and I think that's something we can certainly address. And I believe that was most of the list that we just went through. So I'll open it back up to any questions that Jeff or the commission might have.
Here. Right. I think we're all good. Appreciate the presentation.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next on the agenda item is other business. Anybody have any other business?
Are you making motions regarding either, or we gonna make any motions regarding either application?
I didn't know you needed. That's why I was saying, what was the outcome?
So I guess what Derek was saying would to endorse the peer reviewers' comments as.
We can do that.
We can do that. Yeah, I'll make a motion to endorse the peer review comments as presented.
Yes.
Second,
Whatever date that is, these are.
for both of them.
Yeah, for both.
Yeah.
So they probably be separate
Yes.
motions. So one motion for the villages and
to endorse, I'm not gonna do that. May 11th, 2023, comments from Weston and Sampson. And encourage the
villages.
applicant
Yep.
to address them.
I'll second that. If you want to, unless you
Yeah.
need me to make the motion.
Probably you should. make-
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Fred,
Yep.
5-0. And then same for the last one,
Yeah, May 23rd, comments.
the same motion except for middle 497 Middle Turnpike 17 Cedar Swamp Road and 3 parcels known as Cedar Swamp Road. And the comments were made on 23 May. Moved by Derek.
Second by Ryan.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you. I didn't know you wanted that.
Yeah, no, I wasn't very clear about that.
Any other business? Hearing none. Next meeting is June 28th. And motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Second by Fred. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're done. Thank you.